out what the subsets are and how they would take them apart and put them back together in order to fully understand how that mechanism worked together as one unit. But we would invite others to see that that still has to all come back together in order to work as one unit. For in separation, if we do not put the pieces back together, it will not function as a unit and will essentially break down or not complete the function that it was originally created to do. Or it will not work in the environment as, I'm hearing exponentially, like as many ways as it could, because pieces and parts were taken apart, and we invite others to go back into the fractality of it all. And so as we allow ourselves to combine our frequencies together, the stronger we become as the mycelium network. And I'm hearing the my cells in all. And recognize that many of our points of views and our perspectives are all still based on a story. Oh, I'm seeing now why the books were brought up. It's a story that was written, all stories. Anything that's been transcribed was channeled through a human. The more separation anxiety we have, the more we separate ourselves from the vastness of the perspective, if you will. When we separate the rainbow, we do not see the collaboration and intermingling of the harmonics that create the colors in which they all intersect and intermingle with each other. For in truth, the rainbow is never truly separate. It only appears that way from our limited view and perspective. So I'm being invited to share, ask the question, what if we believed in something so wholeheartedly that we based our entire world around it, such as Newtonian physics, and then Einstein came out, for example, and said, nope, that wasn't 100. It was right for the time, but now this is better. And what I'm being shown is, if this is the case in all things, yet even by me saying this, it creates separation between Newton and Einstein and the next person and the next person. And recognizing that the truth, when it was shared based on that limited view or perspective at the time. And then that expanded out, which gave the ability for the next set of information to be expressed. So it's difficult to describe what I'm seeing right now, but we are being invited to recognize that our resources are from within. The words that we read, the stories that we have been told, the stories that we tell, as I'm being guided to I'm using the word storyteller or instead of teacher. Like the shamans would tell stories, and that's how they passed on the generational information. And they were careful about how those stories were told. They were kept very pure and pristine. But our stories have not. We think they have, but what many of us have seen is, wait a minute, that doesn't add up, right? Whatever story that is. So I'm just being invited to share. Oh, look, I went well beyond. Wow, this one does. I don't know when I'm going to run out of room. Share things and recognize that as we tell these stories, there's an energy behind it. So the more we can include and be inclusive, and the less exclusive we are, the more we come back into harmony and balance. I'm just seeing this as, why am I bringing this up? Okay, so I kind of dug in a little bit there. My guides are basically reminding me to get back to the idea and the concept that there is no time, there is no separation from one perspective. We are a moving fluid of electricity, plasma, charge. It only looks like we're separate because we chose to have this experience as such here. However, everything is intrinsically connected. And what I'm being shown is the cells. So I'm going to go into that a little bit. As we create a disconnect from one another, as we create this idea or concept and we tell ourselves, our cells, and our stories that we are better than someone else, that someone else is better than us, I'm being guided to just play with that a little bit. Both of those statements come from a form of separation. When one cell divides, it is not truly separate. It must work still in unison with all of the other cells. We are being invited to step back and take a look at the stories that we are telling ourselves. Take a look at the games that we are initiating, that we are being initiated into, that we are playing, that we are choosing to communicate with one another. And ask ourselves the question, are the words that we are using creating distortion? Are the words that we are using based on a particular story or paradigm that we think we might fully understand, yet there is still an untold portion of that story that we have yet to access? And how much of an impact would that one missing piece have on our entire paradigm? And if this is the information that we are passing along to other groups and networks, what kind of charge will this create? Will this be an infinite source of abundance and love? Or will this create more unintentional, perhaps, yet still, separation in frequencies? Will this create some form of need, so to speak, for defensiveness? Does this create a sense of hostility when we speak our words of truth? For when we have a platform, when we have an audience, when we write a book, when we tell a story, we harness a frequency and energy that has an effect and social impact on the entire ecosystem, as part of the entire ecosystem. And we are invited to look at this. Are we feeding the ecosystem? Are we creating separation anxiety? Are we creating from a place of separation and anxiety? Is there an inner anxiousness that we are ignoring in order to create a story that was supported in a particular old platform and reality? These are all questions that are certainly useful at times to ask ourselves. And if we are, it's okay. Yet, we must choose and recognize that that is the choice that we are birthing, that we are creating. And the more we create in separation and ego, the more we stabilize those frequencies, and the less we electrify our next choice points, the more we sink into and sync up with a lower geometry. We use the word lower as in, I'm seeing lowercase letters, like they're not as emphasized. The geometry doesn't stand out as much. It doesn't stabilize and link up to a broader bandwidth. Instead, it only has that bandwidth to that one particular subset. And I'm hearing divide and conquer. So we end on this note. That which is happening with this, and I'm bringing it back to the first video that I did with Earth and electronics. And what I was shown is all of this interference. The Earth is creating a way for us to counteract that. But if we're the interference, right? As we stabilize our own anxiousness, as we stabilize through coherence, as we stabilize our own frequency, we are then able to see from this broader perspective. And in doing this, we get back into the flow. We get back into a deeper sinking, a sinking into the earth, a sinking up to source, and less thinking about dissecting and taking things apart in order to put them back together. This has already occurred. Why do we feel the need to continue and facilitate these old programs? For divide and conquer is the opposite of concurrence, coherence. For the war and the battle oftentimes is from within. We are in a separation anxiety from our true source of light, love, gratitude, abundance. And while this is normal as a human from one perspective, and I'm playing with the word normal, from another perspective, many are just one step away from sinking into that realization. Many are clinging to an old perspective, an old point of view, an old story, an old teaching, and they are perpetuating this particular paradigm, this particular value system, this particular story. For in doing that, it makes them feel more stable with a false sense of security. For anything that is not true in this now moment, yet may have been true in a past timeline, is not true. Even though it may have held a particular truth then, it does not hold the same geometry now. Therefore, it creates separation, resistance, anxiousness. We are being invited to come back to the heart of the matter, which as we are in this field, we are focusing on what does matter, which is abundance, joy, and gratitude. And so on and so forth. This unites us. This brings us together as a human companionship. It allows us to be in good company. It allows us to see things from all angles and all perspectives. It allows us to have compassion for one another. And it allows us to stabilize these new grids in such a way that the old, I'm hearing, again, bog of eternal stench, the old labyrinth, the old stories, don't creep in like poisonous vines that then tear apart the unionship that we have been painstakingly, from one perspective, creating and building. And this can happen very, very easily, sneakily, if you will. And it's okay. Yet, we are being invited to play. Are we being playful? Or are we being stinky? Stinkers. Okay, I'm out of room. In love and light, guys. Namaste.